Today I'm going to take you from start to finish on exactly how I built this custom fire pit and how easily you can do it too. Stick around. To start this project off, I used 3/4 inch melamine to create the form, 3 sacks of Quikrete countertop mix, and some number 3 rebar. We'll start by ripping this full sheet down into a manageable size. And I don't have a track saw, so I'm going to use a circular saw and some ingenuity. These small slivers are going to form the edge of your slab, and they also dictate how thick it's going to be as well. In this case, mine was 2 3/4 of an inch. This customer wanted the outside dimensions to be 52 inches long by 28 inches wide. Now we need to make a knockout box for the burners and the media to be placed in. A few brad nails will be plenty sufficient to keep this together. I cut up some extra scrap pieces to help with centering the knockout box in the form. One important feature to keep in mind is drainage, so I'm going to use these 2-inch drain flanges and cast them right into the concrete. Now I'm just checking to make sure the knockout box is perfectly centered in the form. The next step is to put a bead of silicone around all the joints to make sure everything is thoroughly cleaned. Now I am far from an expert at this, but if you get a consistent bead, it'll turn out just fine. Now I'm going to get all the pieces of rebar cut to length. Get everything tied up and secured so you don't have to worry about shifting around when you're pouring the concrete. And it should come out looking something like this. Plenty of reinforcement going down the length of each side and in all the corners. Get your drains in place and a piece of PVC pipe in the center to accept the gas pipe. You can just secure it all down with some silicone. Last bit we have to do before we can pour is cover the whole inside of the form with this finishing paste wax. It'll help the concrete release from the form once it's cured. Drop down a tarp, sheet of plastic, cloths, whatever you have. This can be a pretty messy process. I'll give this a day or two to cure and then come back to it. Well, I'm pretty happy how that turned out. It's incredibly smooth with only some minor air bubbles to fill in, A little bit of slurry will take care of all that. You don't want to apply slurry to a dry surface. Make sure to dampen it before. And then I just get in there with my hands and push it all into the voids. Make sure you cover the entire surface of the top. There could be voids and little air bubbles that you can't see. You don't need to stress too much about making it perfectly smooth right now. Just focus on filling in the voids, and we'll knock all that down later with some wet sanding. I'm sure there'll be a few of you out there saying, oh my god, he's using an electric orbital sander and he's wet sanding with it. It's quite alright, just don't use a garden hose or submerge the thing in water. I'll hit the whole top with some 120 grit, then move to 220, and then finally 320 to give it that ultra fine finish. If you have a wet sander with a diamond polishing pad, that's definitely the best option. Unfortunately, I don't own one, so this will have to do. And the results still come out really nice in my opinion. The last step is to seal the surface to protect it against stains and discoloration. I've had good luck with this sealer before, and it doesn't need to be FDA approved because we're not prepping food on it, it's not going inside in a kitchen, so I feel like it's just fine for being outside. Once again, I dampen the surface, and then it's time to apply the sealer. Repeat this process 2 or 3 times, and you're good to go. With the concrete top out of the way, we can now move on to building the frame. The legs will be pressure treated 2x4s, and I'm going to cover everything up with some 2x6 redwood boards. This here is just a simple jointer sled I built for my table saw. After jointing one side, I rip all the boards down to their final width. These little guys come in super handy when assembling and getting everything spaced perfectly. I like to set the first board up with the 1/8 inch gap on the bottom, get the legs square, and then countersink and drive in some screws. Then just repeat the same process on the other side. Now that I've got the 2 side frames complete, I'm going to get the back boards in place. It's important to get everything clamped securely and then check the whole box for square before driving in your screws. I didn't want any screws visible on the exterior of the box, so I drove in some screws from the inside of the box opposing the previous screws I installed. I'm really liking how these lines are coming out. I wasn't satisfied with how these screw holes looked on the inside of the box. Even though they're not going to be visible once the top is on, it was still bothering me. So I figured out that the cutoff pieces from jointing the boards actually fit perfect on there and look pretty good. A few brad nails to hold it in place, and that's done. Next up was to figure out where to mount the key valve in the igniter. I bought a simple kit off Amazon, mocked up exactly where I wanted, and then trimmed the mounting plate down with a cutoff wheel. Now on to figuring out the door for access. I really didn't have a plan for this, so I grabbed a few extra boards and glued them up together. Now on to everyone's favorite part of any project, all the sanding involved. I'm not going to bore you with all that, so we'll just skip right over it. There is an extra support spanning across the box that I didn't show installing. That 2x4 sits right where the gas pipe comes down through the concrete top. That will act as a clamping point for the gas pipe. Now that all the sanding's done, it's time to seal it. I've come to really like this paraffin oil finish. This is a transparent color, but they make other stains as well. The pre-stain will eliminate a lot of the blotchiness and keep the finish consistent. The pre-stain will make the grain pop out a little bit, so I like to go over and just knock it down with a little bit of hand sanding before the sealer goes on. Paraffin is super easy to apply. Just brush it on with a natural bristle brush, and after about 20 minutes of soaking in, you just wipe it off with a clean rag and you're good to go. It's important not to let any excess oil dry on the wood, as it'll come out sticky and not look good. For the burners, I just did a simple H-style burner using black pipe. And then I drilled a 1/16 inch hole every 2 inches on center. This seems to match some of the pre-built ones pretty good. Now, full disclosure, I am not a licensed plumber nor a gas technician, and you should always seek out somebody licensed to do this field of work. Some final closing thoughts. Although integrating the burner pan into the concrete saves a little bit of money in the end, I don't feel like it's worth all the extra time spent creating it. I think it's well worth the extra investment just to buy a drop-in burner pan. Beyond that, I'm extremely happy how this came out. If you enjoyed this video and got some good information out of it, please hit the like and subscribe. Thank you.